Well, hello, contractors. This is Jack Sheffield, Jack the exam guy. We're talking about the exam today, the trade or technical portion of the general building and residential contractor exam. We talk about them all at the same time because they're very similar. Regardless of which one you're taking, we generally teach that at the same time with the same materials. So there are two parts to the exam. There is something called the contract administration, and you have the project management. We'll talk a little bit later about the order in which I suggest that you take this exam. We do a little bit of math, okay? We see that with the general, there's 65 questions. With the building, there's 55. And with the residential, there's 50. Now, if you've looked at the candidate information booklet, it may say that there's 60 on the residential, 50 on the building, and 45 on the residential. Well, guess what? They don't include the pilot questions. There's 5 pilot questions on each exam that do not count for you, and they do not count against you. These are questions that they are testing out to see what happens when people are answering these questions. They don't want them too hard. They don't want them too easy. If anybody has a complaint about them, they want to know these things before they actually implement them as actual questions. Okay, so there's pilot questions. And I include these because you have to consider those when you're taking the exam, because you have to act as though all of them are actual questions that will count for you or against you. So when we do the math, it's 270 minutes, and we divide that by 65, and we get 4 minutes a question. I'm talking about the general now. And that's 15 questions an hour. All right. So that's the pace that you need to be doing in order to finish on time. And that's probably one of the most important things that you need to do is finish on time. One of the most common reasons that people do not pass this exam is they don't pace themselves correctly. They get hung up on just 1 or 2 or 3 questions, and they don't finish on time. They got 20 questions at the end that they didn't answer. You don't want that to happen. You're going to have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, as they say. All right, so the builder is 12, the residential is 11. Now, in my course, I've created practice exams. They'll all be 15 questions, and that way you'll know that you need to be able to do these practice exams in about an hour. All right, and that's the pace you need to be on. For the building and the residential, there's still going to be 15 questions an hour, and you're just going to be a little bit better equipped to take this exam. Okay, let's talk about the references. All the references are fair game, and I'll give you the list of them in a minute, but you probably have seen them already. All the references are fair game for the contract administration. We're going to talk about the contract administration first. This is the first one on the list that you saw earlier. Now, the contract administration and the project management are distinctly different types of exams. All right, the contract administration is what it says it is. It is about contracts. It is about administering a contract. It is about the things that you need to know in order to administer a contract. Okay, now all references are fair game, but there's a heavy emphasis on the contractor's manual. All right, you should hopefully be familiar with that. You've already taken the business at this point, I hope. If not, not a big deal. But generally, okay, people have passed the business, or at least taken the business, or taken a business class at this point, or taken my course on the business. And you also have the AIA documents. Remember, AIA documents are contracts, so it makes sense that AIA documents are on the contract administration exam. Heavy, heavy, heavy. Building code. Okay, now this is the Florida Building Code building mostly. All right, you won't see many questions in the other code books on the contract administration exam. That's the first portion. On the Florida Building Code building, I want you to concentrate on chapters 1 through 4, which is mainly about permits and the code itself, buildings that are, what activities are not subject to code, what the inspections are going to be. These are, and the different things on the different inspections and what have you. So there's your contract, building documents. What are they looking for on your plan documents. All these types of things that you would need, to take to the building department and know about when you're administering a contract, because it's contract administration. And then at the end of the book, chapters 31, 32, and 33, they hit a lot. These are all things like safeguards during construction and so forth, and what have you. So these are the chapters I want you to concentrate on if you are taking the contract administration exam. There are plan questions on the contract administration exam. All right, you want to make sure you're familiar with that part of the course where I take you through the plans and all the questions and the math. All right, so there's going to be plan questions, there's going to be math questions, and when you're doing these practice exams, a lot of people just want to pull out their phone and use their phone. But you're not going to be able to bring your phone into the exam. So I want you to try to use the calculator you're going to bring into the exam, because that's good. Being familiar with the particular calculator you're using could make the difference. I talk to a lot of people that fail this exam. They get a 66, 67, 68, and if they'd have just had a couple little things that they did differently, like maybe being familiar with their calculator, that could have made a difference. The reason I talk about the calculator is two reasons. First of all, if you have a Casio, I would not use a Casio. Use a different calculator. The reason is when you use the percentage key on a Casio, it goes into margins and it'll give you the wrong answer, not what you're looking for. So don't use a Casio. The other thing is I do like to use the percent key, and I like to teach you how to use the percent key. And you have to know there's two different types of calculators when it comes to the percent key. Some calculators, when you're doing a calculation, you hit the percent key, the answer comes up and you're good to go. There's some calculators when you hit the percent key, you have to then hit the equal sign, and then the answer pops up. So you got to be aware of which type that you have. You can do like a little sample question and see if it's right. So anyway, so we're going to move on to the project management. Now, the project management exam, once again, all references are fair game, but they're more spread out equally over all of the manuals. You're going to get away from the contractor's manual. You're going to get away from the AIA documents. You're going to see more questions about trusses and bracing trusses. You're going to see more questions about energy efficiency. You're going to see more questions about residential code. You're going to see more questions about maybe some out of the manuals that you can't bring in, just trade knowledge type stuff. Okay, and then you're going to have the plan questions. Once again, there's going to be several plan questions, and then there's going to be several math questions. And I'll take you through all the plan questions and all the types of math questions that you're going to need to pass this exam. Okay, now this exam is more focused on actual physical construction. You're out on the job site, you got your tool belt on, all right? You're mixing concrete, you're setting up forms, you're building walls and setting trusses and that type of stuff. All right, not doing contracts when you're doing the project management exam. Okay? Now, overall strategy is I suggest you do the business and finance first. Okay? And here's the reason why. You only got 3 books. All right, so you can concentrate on those 3 books: Forest Contractor's Manual, AIA Documents, and the Builder's Guide to Accounting. I sort of group all 3 AIA documents as one. All right, so there's not that much material that you have to master. But when you get to the contract administration, you do that second, and you're relying on a lot of that stuff you already learned. Okay, so you're just adding some more stuff to it, some more of that math, some of those plans, the Florida Building Code building, and so forth. And then the third one's the project management, where you start to concentrate on all those other books as well. Okay, so that's the overall strategy for the exam. There are some state publications that I want you to be aware of in case you want to look at these things and read these. You don't have to do that. You're going to get all that information from me, and this, you don't have to. But if you want, some people want to make sure that they read it also. You've got something called a candidate information booklet, and you've got the exam reference list. There might be a couple others that I throw in there. When you get through with this particular presentation, your next module in my course will have links and PDFs for these types of things. Okay, and then let's talk about the references. There's a lot of questions about these references. I got a lot of different questions. So first of all, can I write in the reference? Well, you can highlight and you can write and you can underline. The only time I've ever heard of highlighting being a problem was somebody highlighted in red. And I don't even know why that was a problem. It should have been a problem, but he said, yeah, they wouldn't let him take it in. So don't highlight in red. You don't need to highlight in red anyway. Highlight any other color. Sometimes people, and this is kind of interesting. A lot. This is pretty common, is to highlight anything that is a number in a different color. All right, because sometimes what will happen is they won't write the number as a number. They'll write the number as a word, write it out as a word, and you don't pick that up very good. So not a bad idea when you're highlighting to highlight any numbers, and usually it's blue. Usually it's a yellow highlighting, and then you're going to do the blue as your numbers. Okay. So you don't, so as far as writing words, you're not supposed to write any words. Now there's a few things where there's actually an editing error, and I'll say go ahead and make a change. And then anything else is kind of at your own risk if you write it in there. Okay, a lot of people do, and a lot of people write towards the middle of the book, to right there at the binder so they don't, so it isn't seen very easily, but you're really not supposed to write in the book. So it's going to be, I'm going to have to leave that up to you, because you could go to the testing center and they could either not let you take the exam if they see that, or they could give you a magic marker or make you scratch it out. So it's the kind of thing you don't really need that extra stress while you're testing. Okay, so editions, you can use the older editions. All right, it tells you right there in the candidate information book. So if you've got an older book, that's fine. And you don't want one that's 30 years old, but if you got one that is from the last reference list from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you're probably going to be fine. All right, so you don't have to have the actual latest and spend several $100s just to make sure you've got the 17th edition instead of the 16th edition of the Principles and Practice of Commercial Construction. Index is probably the most important study tool and time saver on test day. If you don't know how to use an index, you need to figure it out. All right. Most people do at this point understand how to use an index. It's what I use, even though I know the books much more than you do probably. I still use the index to help me save stuff, find stuff, and I want you to do that as well. And anything that you can't find by index, of course, you're going to want to tab. Okay, and we need to talk a little bit about tabbing. If you've already bought books that are pre-tabbed, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. But I've always found that the companies that sell the pre-tabbed books feel like they have to justify the fact that they're charging you a bunch of money for that. Okay, so they over tab them. There's too many tabs. By the time they put 100 tabs on a book, there's so many tabs you can't even differentiate. You can't see the tree for the forest. So what I suggest is if you can find it in the index, then there's no reason to tab it, right? And 80% of the stuff will, on the books that have good indexes, will get you where you need to be. And we'll talk about that more as you sign up for the course. The tabs are important for another reason as well, is if you're doing your own tabbing, they have to be permanent tabs. If you can take the tab off without ripping the page, then you don't want to use it. It has to be permanent. If you can pull that tab off and move it somewhere else, they're going to think you're going to use these tabs to mark your books for future reference. And that is probably one of the biggest issues I see with tabs. People show up with Post-it notes or stuff that's just got the glue in it that you can move them around, and they are told you either have to take all your tabs off or you have to staple them. Or tape them on or something like that. And that's the last thing you need when you're trying to pass this exam on test day. Okay, so that's a little bit about tabbing. All right, now this is what you're seeing in front of you is just an excerpt from the candidate information booklet. Just wanted to show you that. It does say that in blue here, editions earlier or later than those listed can be brought into the exam, but it's at your own risk. Okay. So you can use other editions than the one, as long as it's the same manual, a different edition. Bound. Okay, everything that's got to be bound. You can't bring any loose papers. You can't bring something that's stapled together. It has to be bound, like in a notebook or in a binder, or at least, some type of materials that binds those pages together. Handwritten and typewritten notes are not allowed. Movable tabs, once again, are not allowed. You will not be permitted to make any marks in your references during the examination. Okay, now these are the manuals that you're allowed to bring in. Okay, now this says only these books. I've got 2 slides though. All right, so you've got all your AIA documents. Okay, both exams, you're going to bring your AIA documents in. You should be familiar at this point with the 201, the 401, and the 701. I won't go into what those are right now because there's a presentation later that gives you some really good details about all of your different references. I just want to show you this. The main thing I want to show you is on this next slide. We're talking about the principles and practices of commercial construction. All right, this for 2023, you can bring this book in now. All right, so that's the big one right there. That's what you really need to know. All these others, the OSHA book, Code of Federal Regulations, Contractor's Manual, Energy Efficient Building Construction in Florida, your truss book, BCSI, Guide to Handling, Installing Metal Brace Trusses, all your code books, Florida Building Code Building, Florida Building Code Accessibility, Residential, Existing, and Energy. All of these books, I've got videos that take you through the manuals, and I also have, some good information about when to use which manual. Okay, but more about that later. Now, there are some manuals that you cannot bring into the exam. All right, that they suggest you have and you study. So you got the Builder's Guide to Accounting. Yeah, not so much as far as I'm concerned. You're done with the Builder's Guide to Accounting by this point. But you have the Building Estimator's Reference Book. We call this the Walker. Okay, it's an estimator's book. There's Design and Control of Concrete Mixtures. Okay, 17th edition. Place and Reinforcement Bars, 10th edition, and Application of Placing and Finishing Gypsum Panel Products. I get this question a lot. Why do they have these manuals that you can't bring in? Well, what I think that if you could, when you were able to bring all those manuals in, we could teach just about anybody how to pass this exam, regardless of what they did for a living. And we still can, but it makes it a little bit harder. It makes it so that the person that's going to pass this exam is going to have some field experience. There's going to be some stuff that they know out of these manuals just by the fact they've been on the job site. They're going to know a little bit about concrete. They're going to know a little bit about gypsum. They're going to know a little bit about, the rebar and so forth. So they want to make it just a little bit more applicable to somebody who actually does have that experience that they are that they're embellishing on their application. Okay, so, and I do have a section in my course which takes you through the important concepts that you're going to want to try to memorize. This is the one part of the course that you do have to try to memorize some stuff. Everything else is open book, by the way. You bring all those books in, it's open book, and it's mainly your finding stuff, right? Not for these manuals. These manuals, I've got a list of stuff that I want you to try to memorize. I basically say, print out these PDFs, keep them with you whenever you're at a job site waiting on an inspection, or you're somewhere where you're, having to wait. Just pull those out, read them, try to memorize. Okay. That takes us through this introduction to the trade exams for the general builder and residential state exam. I want to tell you that I appreciate your business. I'm going to be here for you if you have any questions at all. I wish you the best on this. My name is Jack Sheffield. I call myself Jack the Exam Guy. This is what I do. I don't do licensing. I don't do continuing education. I don't sell books. I help you pass this exam, and I think I can do it. I know I can do it, actually. I'm Jack the Exam Guy. Don't let anybody tell you you don't know Jack, because now you do. And thank you for your business.